This weekend, the Formula One circuit brought us to Qatar for the Qatar Grand Prix. Now, this was a special weekend because it was a sprint weekend, which meant that we had the actual qualifying for the Sunday race on Friday, with Saturday being a completely separate day with both the sprint shootout and the sprint race itself. And before anything else, I want to give a special mention to Oscar Piastri, who did get his first Formula One win during the sprint race on Saturday. Now, it may not be a full Formula One race win, but it's a great start to somebody that's surely going to have a wonderful career. And on top of that, we also have to give a mention to Max Verstappen, who we know just won his third Drivers' Championship. Now, it was just a formality at this point because everybody knew Max was going to win this with the point difference that he had. But this is the weekend he did it. So congratulations, Max Verstappen. You are 3-time consecutive world champion. And with that being said, let's jump into the race. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that Ferrari didn't even have a chance to start with Carlos Sainz. Yes, I know, the Dream Team ended up having an issue with their car that they weren't able to fix before the race start, so Carlos Sainz wasn't able to take the grid. Although, even if he would have started, he would have been starting back in P12, which would have been a difficult position to try to make up many places, but we didn't even get the chance to see what he would have done. Tough luck for Carlos Sainz, and hopefully he comes back stronger in Austin at the next Grand Prix. Now, without a doubt, the most interesting part of this Grand Prix was the first turn on the first lap. The two Mercedes drivers, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, collided on the first turn. This brought back memories of Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton doing the same thing back in Barcelona in 2016. But this time, it was George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Russell was starting P2 on the medium tires, and Hamilton was starting P3 on the soft tires. Now, the problem here is that Hamilton being on the soft tires meant that he would have a much quicker start off the line, which he did. And with this quick start, he was right alongside George Russell going into the first turn, where he seemed to kind of squeeze Russell, who didn't have enough space to make the turn properly. This meant that Russell's front left tire got caught on Lewis's back right tire, causing Lewis to go off into the gravel trap and Russell having to pit. This completely destroyed Hamilton's race, as he was now out of the race completely, and Russell ended up having to go from the back of the grid after pitting to change his tires. Now, this was pretty tough because Lewis Hamilton is currently fighting with Sergio Perez for that second spot in the Drivers' Championship, and this DNF right at the start meant that he had no chance of fighting for points at all today. And besides that, it was tough for the Mercedes team as well because they had a second and third place start on the grid, and they weren't able to capitalize on this, which would have been a huge amount of points. I would love to be in that debrief room to see how that goes down. Although Hamilton did end up taking responsibility and apologizing, there are still some things they need to hash out for sure. Now, with the chaos that ensued after the first lap, there were a couple of drivers that ended up benefiting from this. One of these being Oscar Piastri. As I mentioned, Oscar Piastri won his first ever Formula One race last night during the sprint race, and today he found himself in second place after the first lap. Now, sometimes I forget that Oscar Piastri is still a rookie because he's been performing that well this season, especially in the second half of the season. That McLaren car, team, and both of their drivers have been so solid. And Oscar Piastri is showing maturity as a rookie. Podium after podium, it's unbelievable to watch. It was another great day for Oscar as he ended up finishing P2 in a race that he himself said was probably the most difficult race he's ever had in his life. So congratulations, Oscar Piastri, and if this is just your rookie season, I can't wait to see what you're going to do throughout your career. Now, although Lewis Hamilton and George Russell did collide at the start of the race, and Russell ended up going to the back of the field, he ended up having a pretty impressive charge through the field until the end of the race. He ended up finishing P4 after fighting through the entire field and having done more pit stops than anybody else. This makes their incident even sadder because that car clearly has pace and they would have had some great points today. But we have to give credit where it's due, and George Russell managed to salvage at least some points for Mercedes today. Great recovery drive from him, and I'm sure he would have been hoping for more, but from a sticky situation, at least they got something. On the other hand, one of their direct rivals when it comes to constructors, Ferrari, was clearly lacking pace. They started the day off poorly by only having one car come to the grid and actually start the race, and that car, which was Leclerc's car, had no pace at all. He also got lucky off the start, having jumped a couple places with the Mercedes cars hitting themselves, But towards the end of the race, he actually found himself P5 behind George Russell. He himself couldn't believe it when Xavi, his race engineer, told him. And throughout the race, when he was trying to fight against Lando Norris in the McLaren, he simply had no chance. That Ferrari car just doesn't have the pace when compared to Mercedes and McLaren at the moment, and they need to figure it out if they want to fight and hold on to that position in the Constructors' Championship. Now, Max Verstappen once again had a phenomenal race. He had pole position, fastest lap, and ended up winning the race. Although they had some uncertainty towards the final stint, and by Red Bull standards, uncertainty means that you're within 6 seconds of the car behind you. This was clearly a dominant performance from Max Verstappen. Hats off to him, there's nothing more you can say. 3-time world champion. He didn't get the sprint win yesterday, but he came back strong today and dominated in that car. Which makes the fact that Sergio Perez only finished P10 even worse. Sergio Perez is in direct competition with Lewis Hamilton for second position in the Drivers' Championship. Now, today was a huge day for Sergio Perez to capitalize on the fact that Lewis Hamilton essentially didn't start the race, having been knocked out in the very first lap. But he didn't capitalize on this. Perez himself was starting P12, and he only gained 2 positions because he got penalty after penalty after penalty for exceeding track limits. This isn't the first time that Perez has had an issue with track limits, as it compromised much of his qualifying and his race in Austria back at the Austrian GP as well. I don't know if it's just the lack of concentration or the nerves are getting to him, but Perez needs to be doing more if he wants to keep that Red Bull seat coming into 2024. Alonso's another driver who seemed to be off to a great start, having qualified P4 and then being moved up to P3 after the incident with the Mercedes cars. Now the problem was that McLaren was just quicker overall, and Alonso ended up going into the gravel trap for a bit, which compromised his race about halfway through. He also had some overheating issues from his seat, which we heard through the radio, and I think that probably affected the way he was driving as well. He had a good race, did what he could with the car, but overall it just wasn't enough for another podium. And as strong as Aston Martin started the year, they just haven't been up there anymore in recent races. With the drama that's going on with Lance Stroll as well, that team clearly has some things they need to figure out, and they might have already started to be looking towards next year as well, as this year might not really be within grasp anymore, with the teams coming from behind. Logan Sargent also had a tough day at the office. We heard a radio message from him early on saying that he wasn't feeling well, but he would try to power through and finish the race. Although a couple laps later, towards lap 40 I believe, he decided he couldn't take it anymore and had to retire the car. Clearly wasn't happy about this, but you could see how he was struggling even trying to get out of that car. Qatar is a grueling race on the body, as I'm sure many drivers were battling with overheating and dehydration. I hope Logan's doing alright and it's nothing more than simple dehydration and exhaustion, but good on him for trying to battle through it, and even better from him for trying to make the smart decision and knowing when to stop. He's also a driver that's fighting to keep his seat next year, and I hope he gets inspired and comes back strong at one of his home races in America. Now, this is a topic I love touching on recently, but I do think there's going to be drama in the future at McLaren. The one thing we know right now is that Norris is much quicker in race pace than Oscar Piastri. And with Norris having fought through the field from P10 up to P3, he was now about 2 seconds behind Oscar Piastri in front of him when the team gave them orders to hold position. The team tried to sell Norris some excuse that they were scared of Russell coming up from behind, and Norris wasn't having it. He argued a bit, but overall decided to listen to the team and not fight against Oscar Piastri, deciding that the overall points towards the team was more important than him getting P2. I'm sure this hurts even more after he was beaten to get the first Formula 1 win by Oscar Piastri yesterday. Norris is a phenomenal driver, and I'm sure if at any point there's favoritism going towards Oscar Piastri, he won't sit back and watch it happen. As of now, he's still the quicker McLaren driver, and he wants to show that in the races where he is capable to show that. They're still friends, everything's looking good, another double podium for McLaren, but it's risky having to tell Norris to not fight when he knows he can do better. Just something to watch out for, and we'll see how it evolves throughout the next races. Overall, the Qatar Grand Prix wasn't the most interesting. There was a mandated maximum 18 lap stint for every tire, so this caused a lot of teams to have to do multiple pit stops. You had to do a mandatory 3-stop strategy, and there were some teams that opted for even more. People were hoping that this would cause more drama, but in reality, it just showcased how quickly some of these pit stops from these teams really are. I think McLaren ended up getting 1.8 seconds, which blew my mind. Hopefully we do get some more action at the Austin Grand Prix in 2 weeks time, and until then hopefully the drivers make sure to get a lot of fluids into them and rest after this very, very difficult race in Qatar. Thank you guys for watching this quick breakdown. If you did enjoy the content and want to see more content like this, make sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you know right away when I do drop a video. If you want to follow live updates throughout the race and during the week, anything related to F1, make sure to follow me on X, formerly Twitter, which I'll put right up here on screen. And that's it for now. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.